Grandma has this dress.
No, neither.
I feel like Harry Potter. Too librarian. Too Bono?
No.
No. No. Big no.
Yes.
I look a little bit like a bumblebee. How long you been in these parts?
Bah, if sadness had a color. I bought this? Your Honor, I object.
No. This is so much like my dad.
That is the ticket.
Support for KQED Live comes from Berkeley Rep and the San Francisco Symphony.
Disproportionate impact of
more than half of Black business owners.
And disproportionate.
Somehow we always find a way to rise.
To the blueprint builders, to the backbones of every block, for the curators of the culture, and for generations to follow. You might fall, but never fail. Keep rising, keep rising, keep rising. Apply for business, marketing, and tech makeovers on us.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lance Gardner. I'm a producer here with KQED Live. KQED Live is the events arm of KQED Public Media, and we produce all kinds of exciting events here in the Commons at 2601 Mariposa and all around the Bay Area. I want to thank you for being here with us tonight for this one, and thank you at home for watching on YouTube. For those of you here, you can almost always catch what we do on YouTube at youtube.com/KQED Live. And you can see all of our upcoming events at kqed.org/live. Check them out. We have a really interesting slate of stuff for kids, stuff for food lovers, stuff for art lovers, stuff for political lovers. I don't think that's a word. Anyway, I also want to encourage you, if you like what you see here tonight or you love to engage with KQED in any other way, I would like to encourage you to donate at kqed.org/donate. That's part of what helps to keep us afloat here is support from people like you. We'd love it if you became a member and got access to all the wonderful membership benefits that we have, and you can chat with our membership team at the table out in the lobby if you want some more information about that. And lastly, I'd like to thank our season sponsors. KQED Live has 4 amazing season sponsors who make it truly possible for us to put on these wonderful events for you. They are Asian Art Museum, Berkeley Rep, Comcast Business, and the SF Symphony. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce tonight's host, Sarah Hotchkiss.
Thanks, Lance. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We have a wonderful event for you tonight, Bay Area Comics Drawing from Life. We are so lucky to have the artists with here, Justin Hall, Fred Noland, Rina Ayuyang, and Julia Wertz. Justin, I'm just going to give you a brief run of show. Justin is going to give us a crash course in Bay Area comics history from the early days of syndicated comics to the self-organized DIY comic scene and zine fest that we have today. Then Fred, Rina, and Julia are going to read pieces to us from their recent work. A quick note here that Julia is not able to be here in person, but through the magic of technology, she is zooming in through the ether. And then at the end of those readings, we're going to announce the winner of the caption contest. So hopefully you saw that slide. And I encourage you to submit a caption. If you haven't already, we have very wonderful prizes for you. All right, and then after the reading and the caption contest awardee, we will head back into the lobby and you can enjoy all of the wares from our vendors, Silver Sprocket, the CCA MFA Comics Program, Linnea House, and SF Zine Fest. All right, so last chance. Scan that code, submit a caption. Our first guests on here on stage with me tonight are Christy Song and Justin Hall. Christy Song is a Bay Area journalist and a former KQED arts intern. Christy did so much of our amazing comics coverage over the past year, and she introduced me to so many artists. You'll also see her tabling a lot of zine and comics events. And then Justin Hall, we are so lucky to have, is a cartoonist, educator, and scholar. When we started working on this program, Justin was the dream collaborator because as the chair of the CCA MFA in Comics program, he knows everyone. He also edited No Straight Lines, 4 Decades of Queer Comics, which recently became an award-winning documentary that he also produced. You may have seen Justin's work on Market Street bus stops. It was about the queer history of San Francisco, and that he is turning into a full-scale graphic novel / memoir that is coming out soon. So welcome, Christy and Justin.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you.
And we are going to do this impossible task of telling you everything about Bay Area comics history in 15 minutes. So Christy, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Justin, and giving us this crash course. The region has been such a vibrant place of a lot of comics innovation, and I'm wondering if you could take us back a little bit to the beginning of the first autobiographical comic strip and giving us some background on that.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for having me. To back up just a bit from that, I wanted to point out the importance of the newspapers at the turn of the century, the beginning of the 20th century. It was the dominant media form at the time, and comic strips were a huge part of that. The modern sort of American comic strip really happens as a result of battles between Joseph Pulitzer in New York and also William Randolph Hearst in San Francisco. And Hearst was started off in the SF Examiner. So a lot of the great American comic strips really started out in the SF papers. For example, Mutt and Jeff here we've got, which is created by Bud Fisher, and it was serialized in the San Francisco Examiner as well as other newspapers around the country. But he was a Bay Area native. He was he was born in San Francisco. And these cartoonists at the time were hugely popular celebrities, basically, and made a lot of money actually doing this work. But I think what's interesting, what you're referring to in terms of autobiographical comics, was this really remarkable production by Henry Kiyama. Newspapers, there were so many newspapers at the time. For example, in New York City, you had 30 newspapers for the city of New York. Some of them were generalist publications, but a lot of them were specific to different regions of the city or different ethnic groups or different immigrant groups. And San Francisco had the same thing. So there was, in fact, Japanese-American newspapers catering to that community in San Francisco. And Henry Kiyama himself was an immigrant who came over from Japan in 1904 with 3 of his friends. And he created this comic strip for this Japanese-American newspaper called the Four Immigrants Manga. Now, manga means comics in Japanese, so the Four Immigrants comics. And he created a series of 52 spreads of this material. And it's incredibly authentic and really realistic depictions of what his life was like with his friends as they came over into the United States and into San Francisco. It covers here you can see the great San Francisco earthquake of 1905. He also covers the 1918 flu epidemic. There's a lot of stuff around the racism that he experienced from white farmers, but also the sort of tensions between the Chinese community and the Japanese community in San Francisco. Really, really in-depth look at what it was like for his experiences as an immigrant during that time period. And this was well before, 50, 60 years before the concept of the graphic novel or the sort of better known works were created. So it's a really remarkable, forward-thinking production. He ended up publishing it in 1931 in San Francisco, and it was even made into a musical in Silicon Valley. So yeah.
Jumping forward in time, way forward in time, underground comics really started here with Zap Comics and Art Crumb and Spain Rodriguez. What was so different stylistically between comics as they were known at the time and then this radical underground comic scene that came out?
Yeah, so a lot of it was because of, to back up again a little bit, this is the Comics Code Authority, which was developed in 1954, and it was a seal that was in the upper right-hand corner of basically every American comic from 1954 onward. and it represented one of the most severe forms of censorship in American history of any art form, and came about because of this sort of Senate investigation and the sort of persecution of comics as creating juvenile delinquency and all this stuff, which was, not true. But because of this political pressure, the mainstream American market, which had really been diversifying, becoming more really like the Japanese market, had all these different genres involved, romance comics and horror comics and crime comics. All of that just got almost eliminated in 1954 because of this censorship. And all that was left was basically superheroes and Archie and some funny animal comics. So that's why we're stuck with the superheroes forever. Mixed feelings about that. But one of the things that ended up happening was that because comics weren't allowed to be sold in the newsstands or the supermarkets or drugstores without this seal, but in the 1960s and 70s, the head shops developed. Right? And the head shops were basically sold hippie paraphernalia like bongs and tie-dyed shirts and rock posters and such. But they had no problem selling weirdo comics without a Comics Code Authority seal. So there was a group of cartoonists that developed these really risque comics that were full of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and were able to be sold in these head shops. So the most famous is, of course, Zap Comics by Robert Crumb. It didn't start underground comics. That was really actually probably started by God knows and in Texas. But really, as you mentioned, the San Francisco Bay Area becomes the epicenter really of the underground comic scene, really around the time of the Summer of Love, when all these hippies arrive in San Francisco in 1967. So Zap Comics #1 comes out in 1968. Robert Crumb and his wife push their baby stroller around the Haight-Ashbury and sell comics out of the baby carriage. It's this sort of remarkable moment where Crumb is clearly doing a lot of acid. I mean, if you look at this cover, you can definitely see those influences. And this material really is sort of groundbreaking, right? It really breaks away from what comics had been before. Even though it's looking somewhat to the pre-code comics, it's also creating a new aesthetic. And you had other people from San Francisco who joined up with the Zap Comics Collective, joined up with Robert Crumb. So people like Spain Rodriguez, who was actually a San Francisco native. He was born and grew up in the Mission District. He was part of a biker gang there in the Mission District, and did a lot of comics about that. His work is really quite remarkable. And Gilbert Shelton, who created the fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, for example, which is a Cheech and Chong sort of style stoner culture funnies. And even the more sort of psychedelic stuff, like Victor Moscoso, who did a lot of psychedelic rock posters as well. So this material was really important culturally and aesthetically. It was a huge part of the hippie movement. But the first wave of this was predominantly straight, mostly white men, and a lot of it was really full of a lot of misogyny, racism, homophobia. And so really, from my perspective, the most interesting stuff really starts developing in the queer and feminist critiques of that work that comes in this sort of second wave of the underground comics movement. I should, by the way, say comics with an X, right? It's not C-O-M-I-C-S, it's C-O-M-I-X.
Which is you get the risque.
Yeah, exactly. So this is It Ain't Me Babe Comics, which was developed by Trina Robbins. It's the first all women's underground comics collection, and it's actually published in Berkeley. There was a feminist newspaper called It Ain't Me Babe, and this is It Ain't Me Babe Comics, which is really hard to say fast, by the way. But it comes out in 1970, and then it's distributed by Last Gasp, which is another local comics distributor and publisher that still exists here in San Francisco. And then it's followed up in 1972 with the Women's Comics Collective. And this is Trina Robbins, Lee Mars, Aline Kaminsky, Diane Newman, all these really important creators. They gather together and create this anthology series, which is it was a long-running series, and really sort of a lot of important creators cut their teeth in this series.
What is, explain what an anthology series is, because I'm not sure if everyone knows the difference between, like a single author comic.
Yeah.
and an anthology?
Yeah, so at the time, I mean, for a long time, we had a lot of anthology comics, which basically meant that each creator would have a certain, a short amount of pages to work with, and they would have different short stories that would be collected, oftentimes with a thematic element sort of, unifying the book. So women's comics was about feminist concerns. There was Tits and Clits that came out of LA at the same time, the same year actually as women's comics. And that was slightly more, a risque version of women's comics. But it was really wonderful because it was a way for creators to form community with each other. They would get to know each other and be able to develop these anthologies together. And then also for creators to cut their teeth and get better at their craft, right? They could do a 6-page story, a 3-page story, a 10-page story, and get better and better before they were really ready to tackle their own series individually. So it has a really important sort of place in history that way. And unfortunately, I actually sort of bemoan the loss of these anthology series because now a lot of us cartoonists are expected to come out of the gate with a fully fledged graphic novel, which is, like doing 200 pages of something that you're just beginning with. That's a hard thing to do. So these anthologies really have their place. This is one example of a really important short story that comes in the anthology. So this is Sandy Comes Out, which was Trina Robbins' contribution to Women's Comics #1 that came out in 1972. And it actually tells the story of Sandy Colorado, who is Robert Crumb's sister, she and her baby had left her toxic husband and came to San Francisco and moved in with Robert and his wife at the time, and trying to get away from their situation. And immediately didn't feel particularly welcome or safe with Robert's group of friends. And Trina Robbins heard what was happening and kind of came in and said, "Why don't you move in with me? I need a roommate." So Sandy moves in with Trina and stays with her for a while and ends up coming out as a lesbian. And then moving into a gay hippie commune in the Haight-Ashbury, which is what you did in 1970. Trina decides to do a comic about this. It's a 3-page comic in Women's Comics #1. I identify this as the first sort of literary queer comic because it's a comic that is about the experience of being queer that is not derogatory. It's not a gag strip, and it's not an erotic comic. So this is, the first coming out story really done in comics. And Trina works with Sandy on some of the language of this, but it's basically Trina's story. And Mary Wings reads this comic when she's up in Oregon at the time, and she's so excited to see the coming out story finally, because she's a newly minted lesbian at the time. And she sees the story, and she's like, "Well, this doesn't convey at all the emotional reality of what it's like to come out. This is clearly written by a straight woman." And so she decides, okay, I'm going to make my own. And she had no idea how to make a comic. So she sits down with a rapidograph on her bad lighting on her couch and draws this comic. It's a terrible comic. It really is. She got much better. Don't get me wrong. But like the first comic in 1973, and then she prints it in the basement of a radical women's karate cooperative, which is the most lesbian thing ever, and then distributes it by mail order herself. And it's remarkable because it's the first comic by a full comic by an out queer person. And it's followed up by Lee Mars, another local hero who is still with us in the Bay Area, and with Pudge Girl Blimp, this first depiction of an openly bisexual woman coming to San Francisco, and it's also just a wonderful comic. And Lee is an incredibly accomplished cartoonist. We have Trina and Lee and Mary come to our class every year as the 3 wise women to kind of tell our students what it was like to be women and queer women making comics in the 1970s. It's really kind of amazing to have that opportunity with them. Gay comics also begins with, it's good, right? Gay Comics begins published by Kitchen Sink Press and with the editor Howard Cruz. But then at issue 5, it transfers over to Robert Triptow, becomes the editor, and it shifts over to San Francisco. The publisher becomes Bob Ross, who actually created and published the Bay Area Reporter, which is still a queer newspaper in San Francisco. So this was also another long-running underground comic series that sort of, again, was, I think, taking the underground comics movement farther than the initial wave, right? This is the queer and feminist responses to underground comics became more sophisticated, had more depth to them than the initial, blush of it. To jump ahead, yeah. I will wait for my question.
Can you tell that Justin is a lecturer at school? And he's very, very good at this. He's gone totally off script, which is great. It's amazing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, we had another question, which this is a perfect.
Okay, I'm going to back up.
For.
No, okay, there we go.
But maybe, Christy, do you want to ask about, or shall I take it away?
The anthology question?
Well, we talked about anthologies.
Right.
We did that. So our next question was about, just the self-organized nature of a lot of the Bay Area scene. We had the Alternative Press Expo here, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with, but in the wake of that, we've had the rise of SF Zine Fest and the Bay Area Queer Zine Fest. We've got shops like Silver Sprocket, publishers like Linnea House, everyone who's in the lobby right now. And it just feels like a special place, and I think, Christy, we talked about this at length while we were getting this event ready. Like, what is it that you think what is it about the Bay Area comic scene? It's both its past and its present that makes it so special here.
I mean, I think that a lot of it comes down to what makes San Francisco and the Bay Area special in general, right? There's a sort of remarkable diversity here and a supportive, ethos about telling each other's our stories to each other. That's really wonderful. You see it, I think, in a number of different artistic communities that come out of this area, but absolutely in the underground comics or in the alternative and independent comics movement. It's a really wonderful scene that a lot of it's so DIY, do it yourself, where comics don't require a lot of resources, right? You can make great comics with a ballpoint pen and a piece of paper and some pieces of paper and a photocopy machine if you have to, right? So you can do this stuff and then make your own comics and bring them to a zine fest and share them with other people and sell them, and it's this sort of groundswell of creative expression that's really remarkable, that doesn't require resources and just requires a lot of labor and passion, blood, sweat, and tears. And people have created a really wonderful community around that for generations now, which is wonderful. So, and to your point, I mean, there's, certainly as we talked about the underground comics movements, the collectives around that, coming from that scene, but then also more modern iterations, right? And should I transition to the next one? The next slide. This is another important Bay Area collective or sort of group of artistic scene coming out of with comics. And this is Jason Shiga, who was a math major at Berkeley. And after he graduated with a math degree, he decided to make comics, which is cooler. But he created this art night every week, and all these different creators would come to this art night and develop their ideas together, sort of in person, make pages together, and sort of swap ideas. So. Lark Pien, Tin Pham, Derek Kirk Kim, Jesse Ham, all these people came out of that scene. The biggest success really coming out of it was Rina Ayuyang, who created American Born Chinese. This is colored by Lark Pien. So this was a really important sort of community moment as well. A lot of them have also been connected to the San Francisco Cartoon Art Museum as well.
And this is like the 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, yes, exactly, okay. Yeah, that era. Mm-hmm,
cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, and then, thank you, Justin. But show us so we know.
Yeah.
What's the next slide? Okay.
Oh, okay. This is
Justin's book.
This is my book. If you want to know more about queer comics, and there's again a lot of Bay Area people in here, this is the book that I made, put together about the history of the.
Which is a huge history, 1960s to the 2000s. Yeah. So. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
yeah.
Christy. Excellent. We did it. We covered all the history. So now you're extremely well equipped to situate the following three artists within that historical spectrum. Our first artist tonight is Fred Noland, who manages to capture, I think, with humor and great insight, some of the struggles of everyday life. I really identify with a lot of the humor in Fred's work. His memoir, Steady Rollin', Preacher's Kid, Black Punk, and Peddlin' Papa, published earlier this year. It is highly recommended. You can find it in the lobby. I'm just gonna keep saying that. And he's currently working on a really exciting project about a turn-of-the-century American cyclist named Major Taylor, and that's coming out next year, 2025?
2025.
From Drawn and Quarterly. So please take it away, Fred. Your clicker is ready.
Good evening. Thank you for coming out. So as was mentioned, Steady Rolling is a book that covers memoir comics that I did starting from 1998 and finishing in 2022. And it covers early childhood memories. It covers that kind of weird gray area of early adulthood and goes all the way through to my life now as a parent and the COVID pandemic. And the part of the book that's the most interesting to me looking back on it is the COVID comics, because even though that was only 3 years ago, it feels like a lifetime ago. So let's get into it. It's the thought that counts. My father could never be trusted to do the family shopping. On the rare occasion when he was deputized with this task, he would return with curveballs. We were a Pepsi family in Coca-Cola country. More than once, this instantly flat suntan lotion flavored atrocity was offered in its stead. Cold cuts arrived in the form of pimento loaf. Despite our repeated protests, he insisted on cooking with super salty green olives. The resulting nausea-inducing Mexican food was the stuff of legend. Once in a while, he would surprise us with treats. These were equally exotic. There was a strange peanut brittle that was chewy rather than crunchy. The peanut still had the skin on, and it was Pepto pink colored. Even less appetizing was a Neapolitan-patterned bar constructed from a paste of ground coconut and sugar. It took a lot of Fanta to wash that down. We intuited this rare altruistic act to be appreciated, however grudgingly. Thanks, Daddy. A few years ago, he surprised me with a birthday present. I was in my mid-30s. To the best of my recollection, he'd never bothered at any point in my youth or adolescence. It was a race car-themed track jacket of indeterminate origin, about 3 sizes too big, red, quilted, very not me. And I love it. I almost wore that tonight, and unfortunately, it's no longer 3 sizes too big, it's only like 2 sizes too big. So that didn't, not to. I took it in to have the zipper fixed, and the tailor was a little perplexed. You like this? Well, she was being delicate. I assumed she could see the zipper would cost probably twice what the garment did. It elicits a lot of questions. Hey, you a racing fan? Not even a little. My father died a few years ago. Our relationship was and is complicated. I cherish this gift because however ill-suited it is, it reminds me that at least once in a while he thought of me, and it's a thought that counts. But it raises the question, who did he think I was? I know parents often put their own projections on their children, but this is pretty weird. Can you help me find a gift for my son? He's about 6'7", 500 pounds, and in the Russian mob. Let me check in the back. So I'm reading, to back up a little bit, I'm reading 3 stories for you today, and they're all from The New Yorker. Purely coincidental, but still yay for me, I was in The New Yorker. So this is one of the COVID comics. Social bubbles are one of the new COVID-19 era concepts. My bubble crosses over with my ex's because we share a child. They have a giant bubble/compound. She and our son live in a duplex, downstairs from her best friend, her wife, and their 2 boys. It's a pretty sweet setup. The ex's compound is expanding to include their next door neighbors. Mine remains a veritable hermitage. The other day, she checked in to make sure I was holding up my side of the deal. It was an odd conversation to have. How are you dealing with dating? I haven't seen anyone since this started, and it's driving me nuts. Hang in there, we need you in our germ pod. I even rebuffed a booty call, which really isn't in my nature. You want a medal? When I was a youngster, my parents would sometimes regale us with stories of their hard times. They were Depression-era kids, so this was genuinely harrowing stuff. My father had to drive through a Klan demonstration on the interstate in Alabama. The only reason he was allowed to pass unharmed was because his sister, who was pregnant, was in the passenger seat. He clutched a crowbar as he rolled through. As a young teacher, my mother walked to work during the Watts riots. Destroyed buildings and burned out vehicles lined the route. How will we relate this defining moment to future generations? And you couldn't hook up. Nary a lay to be had. Grandpa. This is about my favorite thing ever, scooters. I know you all love scooters. The scourge of rental scooters will not die. The industry struggled with profitability early on. The reduced need for last-minute solutions owing to pandemic home offices should have spelled the end. Now they are back with a vengeance and even more irritating. As a cyclist, I'm annoyed at their co-opting of hard-earned public infrastructure like bike racks for corporate profit. I might have engaged in some light vandalism, snipping their cable locks during evening walks. I didn't stand out. I didn't stand out. I live in Oakland. Everyone walks around with bolt cutters. This lasted a few weeks until I was distracted from my mission by ADHD. Is that a moth or a butterfly? Not that my actions would have any lasting impact. Their numbers have increased unabated. Old Two Scoots, by the way, is a real person. Like, I actually saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he actually has bred. So he was riding two scooters with his son, straddling two scooters with them. Kudos to him, he had a helmet on the boy. So hopefully he won't end up like his father. Riders seem intent on discarding them at the worst possible locations, blocking curb ramps and sidewalks. Their freewheeling pleasure inspires users to greater folly than they would normally engage in. Wrong-way street riding, doubling up twice the injury for half the price, breakneck speeds on the sidewalk. I've developed my own method for dealing with scooters salmoning in the bike lane. This works really well, by the way. Over the years, manufacturers have produced them with tougher, beefier frames, increasing their lifespan and keeping them from the 2-month street-to-landfill turnarounds. This is good. Other less dignified innovations include newfangled designs that allow the operator to scoot while seated. I guess all that standing for a 10-minute trip proved exhausting for some. I can only imagine how sloth-inducing the next iteration will be. A quick survey revealed that scooters have spread to every continent save Antarctica. Even that is just a matter of time. But don't worry, I have a plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. When we were putting this night together, we wanted to show a range of artistic styles because comics contains multitudes, right? I'm sure you're all well aware. So I'm very excited to introduce our next artist, Rina Ayuyang, whose drawings convey a real sense of time and place through the ambiance of them. There's color, there's shading, there's very high contrast scenes. She'll be reading tonight from her second book, The Man in the Macintosh Suit, another true must-read for anyone here, especially if you're interested in San Francisco history. Welcome, Rina.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you. Hey, guys. I'm really excited about this mug, I have to tell you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming. I am going to read from my latest book called The Man in the Macintosh Suit. Just came out this spring. It's kind of a departure from what I usually do, which is autobios, stuff about my family, about pop culture, and coming from Pittsburgh. And so I wanted to do a comic about, like a detective comic that had Filipino people in the lead roles. And it's like an homage to film noir, and my previous book was an homage to American musical, so it was sort of like a sequel in some ways. So the excerpt that I'm going to read from the book is, so basically the book is about this man, this Filipino gentleman. His name is Alessandro Bobot Juanez. He's coming to the United States to make money for his family, especially his wife, who is back home in the Philippines. And he finds himself as a farm laborer in Central California. But then he one day mysteriously receives a letter that says that his wife is actually in San Francisco. And so this takes him to San Francisco, and also meeting people and a community of Filipino of immigrants in San Francisco's Manila town in the 1920s. So I'm going to read from the part where he comes to San Francisco for the first time. And the book, did I mention the book is The Man in the Macintosh Suit? All right, right there. And when I read this, you picture Bobot, like in my mind when I wrote him, I always thought of like film noir Hollywood, like so Dana Andrews / Humphrey Bogart / my dad. Okay, so my voice will get increasingly lower throughout. Okay, couple more blocks. Almost there. People speaking Ilocano now. This is the right address, but why this place? Hi. Can I help you? Is Benny here? I have some business with him. Judging by the cut of your suit, I'm reluctant to answer that question for Benny's safety. I'm his cousin. Can you get him, please? Wait here. What's your name? Bobot. What? Benny and Bobot. Funny. You're Benny's cousin? Yeah, is he here? Can I see some proof that you're really his cousin? Wow, what is this? Okay, here. We have the same last name. Bobot! My God, Benny has talked so much about you, Bobot. I'm Danilo, and this is Dolce. And no, we are not cousins. So what are you doing here? I need to talk to Benny. He wrote me a letter asking to visit him. Unfortunately, it got to me late. Oh, Bobot, Benny has been out of town. He said he had some things to take care of. Did he say where? He didn't say. Yeah, he didn't tell us, unfortunately. But by golly, Benny would be sad if he finds out he had missed you. Really sad. Where's his apartment, do you know? I can hear my dad in his voice. Well, actually, I'm looking after his place till he comes back, whenever that is. Where are you staying? Do you need a place to stay? It's okay. I think I can check into one of those hotels down the street. Nonsense, you're Benny's cousin. I don't want to be a hassle. Do you have any money? Yeah, a little bit. Well, save it. If you're okay with me staying there with you, Benny trusted me with his apartment. You'll hardly see me since I work here all the time anyway. Plus, you have one of the best cooks in town to make your meals. Well, how can I refuse? I never get used to this hill. kitchen, bathroom here, bedroom there. I can sleep on the couch. He still has these? Oh yeah, he still likes to look things up. How about you? Benny mentioned you also studied law? I passed the bar right before I came here. Not a lot of jobs like that over here. At least not for us, anyway. Least I can do is try to apply what I learned to the rest of my life so that I don't forget it all, I guess. Sure, you could get an office job, maybe even at a law firm? I'm better at jobs that don't require much thinking. The rest of my life is a mess right now. Well, I'll let you get settled. Have to get back to my next shift. Come to the cafe later. I'll have dinner there for you. Great, thanks. Damn, Benny has a real toilet too? It won't be long, Alicia. We'll be together soon. I'll make sure of it. I think that was the most sleep I've had since I came to the States. Oh, here he is. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Want some coffee? So how did you get here? Did you come here to help family back home? That's what we're all here for, right? To help our wonderful families out. Not a lot of Filipino women would want to make that trip alone. I mean, I wouldn't want my wife to. Did you ever ask your wife if she was interested in coming here? Sorry, I say things out of line sometimes. I guess I'm not like most women. But I believe if given the opportunity for a new life, any woman would say yes. I don't know you all that well, but from what I've already endured out here in the States, I'd say you're a very strong lady. It's flattering to hear you say that. When I was a kid, I was told I was so quiet. Like a mouse, they'd say. But I never felt quiet. I had so much loudness inside me. So loud I felt it hurt everyone's ears. So I thought to manage it, best to keep it all in. Safer to stay in the background. Funny enough, I wanted to work on backdrops, be a set designer, get out of Father's house. There weren't any opportunities for that back there. But I found out there aren't too many here either. So that's why I'm on my way out to take a typing class so I could be a secretary or something. Anyway, have a nice night. Good night. And for the record, it was my wife's choice to stay in the Philippines. And why wouldn't it be? She must be so content with her life. I mean, she had you as a husband. You're going to take care of everything, right? Hui, Bobo, you ready to eat? Yeah, I can eat like a whale. How long have you lived here? Where? Manila Town? Oh, just a couple months. Before that, I was a bellhop in a hotel in San Jose. That's how Benny and I became friends. He's a busboy here, but he has a bunch of other jobs in the city. Delicious affrittata, just like back home. What made you want to come to the States? Someone in my town was recruiting men to work in the U.S., and I had a degree in political science. Maybe I can help in political relations between the U.S. and the Philippines. I laugh at myself thinking about that now. I'm surprised you haven't made it to Manila Town before. A lot of farm workers stay here between harvest seasons. Just could never afford to live here. So why did Benny want you to come visit now? The fruit season's still going on, isn't it? Oh, he didn't go into real detail in his letter. Huh, that sure sounds like Benny. I hope you stay long enough to take it all in. It's the closest thing to home. The food, the language, it's a real community. But we do have our share of problems. A lot of gambling goes on here, so be careful, Bobot. I know too many guys with ruined lives to show for it. And listen, we might have a good thing going here, but that don't mean we have run of the place, got it? Lots of folks think we're guests they can boot out at any time they feel like it. I know that all too well. God, I'm so tired. Good night, Bobot. Welcome to San Francisco.
last but not least, we are so lucky to have Julia Wertz kind of with us tonight. I just finished her most recent book, Impossible People, and I love the story. It's so well written. But I also was so impressed by her attention to detail. She draws Brooklyn streets and storefronts with this incredible, minute, like the lettering on the awnings. You can recognize everything if you've ever been there. I'm a total sucker for Greenpoint storefronts. Julia is reading 2 pieces for us tonight, so please welcome Julia, not to the stage, but to the screen.
Hi. Oh wow, my face is so much bigger than I thought it would be. I'm really sorry I can't be there tonight. Obviously, as you can hear, I'm sick and I'm at home. I live up in Sonoma, so I'm not that far away from San Francisco. But just to give a little bit of context about like my work's place in San Francisco's comics history, that sounded like a grandiose thing to say, but just how I came to be. So I got my start making stick figure comics in the early aughts when I worked at Cafe Beer on Divisadero and Valencia Pizza and Pasta on Valencia and 19th, which is still there. I used to draw comics on the back of bagel orders at the cafe, and I had no idea that they would become anything other than a fun thing to do during downtime. But they did. They kind of expanded and grew, and I moved to New York, and that's where I made the book I'm going to read from, Impossible People. And just to set up the story a little bit, I made a book and it came out in French, and I thought, like, this is it. Like, I'm famous now. If you have a book in French, then you get to go to France, and that means you're set. Like, you've got it made, and everything's going to be great. And it was more of a harsh reality check for me, as you will see in the comic. So let's get my giant face off screen. There we go. A little trip to France. Whoa. Hey dude, guess what? One of my books is being translated into French, and the publisher is sending me to France for the debut. Holy shit, that's amazing. Remember just a scant few years ago when you started making goofy comics and we all thought that was a funny joke that wouldn't go anywhere? Oh, yeah, wait, that's what you all thought? Dude, come on, you called your comics a fart party. All right, fair enough. Anyways, do you want to go to France with me? I don't know. Last time I traveled, I forgot my toothpaste and I couldn't brush my teeth for a week. Yeah, but that's because you were in the jungle in Colombia. This is France. They'll have toothpaste for sale everywhere. I guess so, but they definitely won't have deodorant. LaGuardia Airport, 5 a.m. Oh, look at that bespectacled hunk over there. Move over a seat so he doesn't think we're boyfriend and girlfriend. What? No, he's not even looking our way. Hey, brother, did you call our mother today? The mother we share because we're related? Well, he's looking right at you, probably because you're yelling. Why are you hiding in your clothes? I don't want him to see me. I don't think you understand how human interaction works. I'm bored. Tell me a story. Okay, so once I was at a party and I ate what I thought was a personal apple pie. But it turned out it was just a small pie meant for everyone to share. Did people get mad at you? Yeah, everyone was like, I can't believe you ate that whole pie. But I just thought there'd be a tiny pie for everyone. That is my favorite story. We landed in Paris and met up with my handler, Nicholas, who gave me a copy of Whiskey in New York, the French version of Drinking at the Movies. What do you think? Wow, it's a hardcover. The Americans would never give me a hardcover. The train ride through the French countryside was just as beautiful and melancholy as I expected. I'm listening to a Shannon and the Clam song. They are a local Oakland band. You should listen to them. When I arrived at the festival the next morning, I was confronted with an immediate communication barrier. So pretend this guy has a heavy, thick accent, like French accent, which I'm not going to do, but just pretend. Do you want to sell books? I'm a guest. Do you want to buy books? No, oh, a guest. What's your name? Julia Wertz? Ah, yes, the American. Sorry, I did not understand you before. No, I'm sorry. I should have learned some French. Wow, this stuff is really good, but none of these are comics. It's all fine arts. What am I doing here? I arrived at my booth to discover the posters from the publisher did not arrive, so Nicholas ripped apart a book and strung up the pages. This will have to do. It was a rough but amusing start. I don't mean to be a princess, but this is not my name. Throughout the day, I encountered many cultural and communication differences. I'm going to buy your book in English. Great, thanks. But why not in French? It's not funny in French. In the afternoon, I gave a guest lecture to a group of students studying art. Thanks for giving that talk. It's important for the students to see you because to them, well, your book, your story is much more interesting than you as a person. It's good for them to see reality. Oh, okay. I hope my lecture wasn't too boring. No, most of them probably weren't even listening. So your book is cartoons about living in New York, but this is an art festival about world travel. Why are you here? I genuinely have no idea. You look pretty in this author photo in the festival pamphlet because your face is hidden. After the festival, I wandered around the city for hours until I was lost. All the stores were shuttered and the streets were empty. I couldn't find any place to buy food. Then, of course, it started to rain. I'm lost, hungry, and alone in France. My dreams of becoming a Dickensian orphan are finally coming true. So this is a piece I haven't published anywhere yet. I had a kid in 2020. I don't think I need to explain why that year was terrible. But this, oh, my face is back. Oh no, I have a nasal strip on. You guys weren't supposed to show me this. Okay, thank you. Anyhow, okay. If anyone is sick and needs to know a good hack, you can buy nasal strips at Rite Aid. They're like $20 or $20 for $5, and they're great. And they make you look insane, and you just all saw it. So anyways, the midwife. There's a lot of talk around the loneliness of motherhood and its various causes. Some new parents feel lonely due to the isolation caused by being stuck at home, and for others it's more identity-based, or rather the disillusion of that identity. It's incredibly disorienting to go from a lifetime of having full autonomy to suddenly having every moment of your day and night dictated by a tiny human who has no regard for your wants or needs. When you enter the hospital to deliver your baby, you are still a singular entity. When you leave, you are fractured. Part of you is now outside of you and is their own being as well. What is left of you is now in charge of keeping both beings alive without sleep and without losing your mind. I drank a lot of water from a camelback backpack, so I didn't have to sit up. It was very helpful. Not to be overly dramatic, but that is fucking insane. And then there is the simple loneliness of 3 a.m. One night, when Felix was 5 weeks old, I was feeling acutely lonely in the dark living room when I remembered something that happened a few months ago. Flashback to an afternoon walk, 7 months pregnant. Oof, I hope I make it to the bench by the market. I had a lot of sciatica pain in my ass, and then the baby was stomping on my guts. Whew. Mind if I sit here? Go for it. You just started your 3rd trimester? Yeah, wow, how did you know? I used to be a midwife. Also, you're dressed like you think you can walk as much as you did in your 2nd trimester, but now you're resting on a bench because the 3rd trimester caught you by surprise. Am I right? Yep, you nailed it. And what do you do for work? I'm a cartoonist. Yes, an artist. So, you're coming to terms with your physical limitations as well as creative ones, and you're wondering how your creative identity might change as you become a mother. Am I right? Yeah, wow, you really got right in there. Got any other insights for me? Sure. One thing I used to tell all of my clients is that, in some ways, every mother is a single mother. What do you mean? It's wonderful to have a supportive partner and family, but on a certain level, you will still go through motherhood alone. No one else carried that child in their body. No one else will suffer the way you do, and will, with him. Your best recourse is to have friends who are also moms, but in that deep, dark, night of the soul type of way, this is a path that every mother walks alone. Oh, there's my friend. I have to go. Oh, but one more thing. Take care of yourself because you're not 20, and over the next few years, you're going to age really fast. A path that every mother walks alone. Oh, I get it now. I wonder how many other mothers are out there right now doing what I'm doing. Suddenly, I felt an overwhelming sensation of a sort of cosmic companionship from all the women throughout all of time who had spent countless hours rocking their babies while staring at the night sky. As quickly as the feeling came, it vanished, leaving me crying in the dark. I had never felt anything like that, an instantaneous and deep connection to women I had never met, to women who were dead, to women who had not yet been born. And then I felt extremely silly. Haha, I bet this is a thought that every woman has had. I was comforted by how deeply unoriginal the experience was. It's not a lonely path. We're all here.
Thank you, Julia. She's a total pro, zooming in while sick. Can we get a round of applause for everyone, especially Julia? All right, so now the moment you've all been waiting for. Christy is here with me to announce the winner of the caption contest. And the winner is?
The winner is Neha P with this little comic. Can you unzip me, please?
And are you here? If you could come forward, we can hand you your gift, your prize, if you're present still. Anyone? Our prize winner? All right, well, come find us after, and we will give you all 3 books from the artists who are here with us tonight. That is our show. In lieu of a Q&A, we're gonna all go out to the lobby and mingle with the artists who are here and keep looking at all of their books. You'll have a chance to buy them and the other wares from our vendors at Stuff Zine Fest, Linnea House, Silver Sprocket, and CCA. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you out there.